Penguin Random House Audio presents The Virginia Dynasty, 4 Presidents and the Creation of the American Nation by Lynne Cheney. Read for you by Nan Mcnamara. Prologue. Put the spike of a drawing compass into a map of Virginia at Ferry Farm, George Washington's boyhood home. Extend the other leg of the compass so that it reaches out 60 miles, and draw a circle. Within it, not only Washington but also Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and James Monroe were born, grew to manhood, and made their homes. From this small expanse of land on the North American continent came 4 of the nation's first 5 presidents, a dynasty whose members led in securing independence, creating the Constitution, and building the Republic. One of them doubled the size of the United States. Another extended its border to the Pacific Ocean. Sometimes they worked as a band of brothers, but not always. They quibbled, they quarreled, and they fought. Were political parties a bane or a boon? What were the limits of dissent? How should a republic prepare for war? George Washington, the most charismatic of the dynasty, was lionized in his lifetime and worked to become a legend in praiseworthy ways, such as embodying good character and staying above politics, or at least politics as he understood it. Tall and powerfully built, he heightened his presence with elegant dress, even wearing fashionable yellow gloves on special occasions. He was a man of few words, which enhanced his natural dignity and helped conceal his explosive temper. He had countless admirers, but few friends. Jefferson, tall, long-limbed, and with reddish hair, was known for receiving visitors in well-worn waistcoats and run-down slippers, his way of demonstrating that for all his ties to Virginia's aristocracy, he was a man of the people. Gifted with a soaring imagination, he was a master of language, able to set forth ideas that would inspire generations. He delighted in everything from high art to scientific discovery to gadget building. His often shifting views made him a hard man to know. Madison, the most profound thinker of the group, usually dressed in black. To strangers, he could seem stern, but with friends after dinner, he was a charming conversationalist. A small, compact man, he could disappear in a crowd, particularly when accompanied by his glamorous wife, Dolly. But when he entered debate, as at the Constitutional Convention, his powerful mind made him impossible to ignore. A well-grounded man, he was the least likely of the dynasty to disparage others, but he was expert at digging in his heels in defense of ideas. Monroe, the last of the Virginia dynasty, was also the last president to wear knee breeches. Old-fashioned and awkward, he let his ambition show, but kept his temper under wraps by writing blistering letters to those who offended him, and not mailing them. Because he lacked the intellectual prowess of a Jefferson or Madison, he can seem a symbol of the dynasty's winding down, but through a remarkable career in Congress, the diplomatic corps, and the cabinet, he learned one of the secrets to being a good president. Listen to smart people. How to account for this gathering of talent, aspiration, and achievement? Part of the answer, and all explanations of human beings are partial, is the transformative time in which these men lived. As children of the Enlightenment, they imagined a society in which reason replaced dogma and individual rights were honored. Other nations had been founded in the gloomy age of ignorance and superstition, as George Washington put it. But the United States had its beginnings in an epoch when the rights of mankind were better understood and more clearly defined than at any former period. Establishing a nation built on what Washington called the researches of the human mind after social happiness was an irresistible calling, one that animated the 4 Virginians and drew them together. Washington taught himself about the exceptional age into which he had been born. Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe attended schools and colleges steeped in the new learning of the Enlightenment. They studied Latin and Greek, as was expected of young gentlemen, but they also had teachers from Scotland's esteemed universities, who placed great value on natural philosophy, as science was called, and moral philosophy, which concerned ethics and politics. William Small, Jefferson's beloved tutor at William and Mary, Archibald Campbell, founder of the academy where Monroe studied, and Donald Robertson, whose school Madison attended, had all breathed the air of the Scottish Enlightenment and understood well its distinctive practical side. Science and the study of man were more than ends in themselves. They could be used to better the world. Madison attended Princeton, which was presided over by the Reverend John Witherspoon, a formidable man and the preeminent student of the Scottish Enlightenment in the colonies. In Nassau Hall, he lectured about the natural rights of life and liberty and justified the overthrow of tyrannical governments, ideas of clear application in revolutionary times. Madison was the only one of Witherspoon's students to become president, but among the others were a vice president, 39 members of the House of Representatives, and 21 senators. Witherspoon himself was a member of the Continental Congress and a signer of the Declaration of Independence. How, one wonders, would the men of the Virginia dynasty have fared in another time? A generation earlier, revolution was not on the table, and viewed from America, the Enlightenment was a mere glow on the horizon. The era in which these men lived determined their destiny, as did their place on the planet. Virginia was the periphery of civilization, where the dictates of tradition had less force. It was easier to question assumptions about monarchy than it would have been at the imperial center. It was easier to imagine a new society in which citizens could worship as they pleased rather than bow to a long-established church. Being far from England had this practical benefit. As subjects of a distant monarch, Americans became adept at governing themselves. Operating under a royal governor, Virginians, or to be accurate, some white male property owners in Virginia, elected the legislature, which in turn passed bills and levied taxes. Talented young men of the gentry class were expected to participate. Washington and Jefferson entered the House of Burgesses at ages 27 and 26, respectively. Madison became a member of the House of Delegates at 25, and Monroe at 24. Virginia, ironically, was the most English of the colonies. Royalists who left England after Oliver Cromwell's ascent to power gravitated there and set its culture. And one of the first royal governors of Virginia, Sir William Berkeley, perpetuated it by recruiting younger sons from prestigious English families to immigrate. They and their descendants built homes in the English style, even scoring wood siding and applying sand to it, as at Mount Vernon, so that it looked like the stone facing of a British manor. They hired instructors to teach their children the formal steps of the minuet, and collected books and pamphlets from Europe. At the same time, the British took pleasure in pointing out how far American efforts at sophistication fell short. Their cultural achievements were scant to non-existent, according to Sidney Smith, an English cleric known for his scathing critiques. "Who reads an American book?" he asked. "Who goes to an American play, or looks at an American picture or statue?" Smith failed to mention New England painters such as Gilbert Stuart, and passed over poets Anne Bradstreet and Phillis Wheatley, both of whom had been published in London. But Smith's assessment, and others like it, hit close to home in the Upper South, and Virginians did not lodge a defense. Instead, they emphasized what set America and Virginia apart: land that stretched on forever, full of beauty and possibility. A goodly field, Washington called it, which promised a fruitful harvest. Jefferson described the passage of the Potomac through the Blue Ridge as perhaps one of the most stupendous scenes in nature, and the Natural Bridge as the most sublime of nature's works. Virginia was the largest of the colonies. The land grant of 1609 to the Virginia Company of London had an eastern border that extended along the east coast from Cape Fear to Barnegat Bay. The grant included the territory northwest of the Ohio River, an area larger than any European country except Russia. Even after seed...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?